Chapter 19. My Home and Native Land. The aged DC-3 lumbered over the boreal forest with the grace of a drunk. Jeanne and I peered out the scratched windows at the endless expanse of trees, broken only by scattered sky-blue lakes. We were on the final leg of a long journey to our new home and teaching position at the First Nations Native Reserve in northern Ontario. As the plane banked for landing, a small cluster of modest houses came into view, standing in quiet isolation against the vast wilderness. Nearby we spotted what looked like the school campus. We had arrived at Sandy Lake. The vintage 1938 de Havilland throttled down for its descent. Surprisingly, the landing on the dusty gravel airstrip was soft. As we descended the well-worn aluminum steps, we were met by a small group of locals dressed in jeans, plaid shirts, and warm smiles. Without a word, two of them began loading our bags onto an old dented Ford pickup truck. The first to greet us was Eddie Fiddler, the school's guidance counselor and my primary contact. He had a quiet, reassuring presence and welcomed us with a brief rundown of our accommodations on the school campus. Off along the perimeter of the airstrip, children clung to a chain-link fence, watching us with wide, curious eyes. I imagined that every September they gathered to watch plane loads of fresh, bewildered-looking teachers and nurses arrive, a source of annual entertainment, I suppose. We climbed onto the back of the dusty pickup truck, sprawling across our luggage with a perfect view of the reserve as we bounced along the road towards the school. The dirt roads were riddled with potholes, making for a slow and jarring ride. Though the distance from the airport was short, the truck struggled to navigate the uneven terrain. The sights and sounds of the reserve were unlike anything I had ever seen. The homes appeared scattered, as if placed randomly, without fences or a formal property line. There were no neatly trimmed lawns or gardens or birdhouses, none of the familiar suburban touches we were accustomed to. Instead, yards were dotted with piles of cut wood for heating, outdoor privies, and a curious assortment of discarded appliances and snowmobiles. Old cars, pickup trucks, and ATVs crisscrossed the rutted roads, weaving between the surprising number of people who simply walked. Dirt paths and trails extended beyond the reserve, hinting at the vast wilderness beyond. At the heart of the community stood a massive diesel-powered generator, the sole source of electricity for the 2,000 First Nation residents. Our first introduction to Eddie's wife, Ruth, revealed a quiet woman with a quick laugh, always busy preparing food or tending to children. Their small home, a standard 800-square-foot reserve bungalow, housed 3 daughters and 2 sons. Water had to be carried in and, depending on the time of the year, boiled before drinking. Though the house was clean and well organized, nothing was new. Every item served a practical purpose. Outside, part of a moose carcass was stretched over a smoldering fire, slowly smoking to preserve the meat and fish for later consumption, as refrigeration was limited. Teaching on the reserve. My teaching assignment covered grades 7 through 10. Any student wishing to pursue higher education had to leave the reserve, traveling to Red Lake or as far away as Winnipeg. The Thomas Fiddler Memorial School consisted of one large building with a gym and several smaller outbuildings, all constructed in the standard government-issued style. The classrooms were mostly open spaces with minimal walls to maximize the use of the structure. Winter set in early, but my oil-fired furnace kept my outbuilding classroom warm and comfortable. My commute was a short walk across the campus from the apartment to the school. One day during an English as a second language class, a young student named Sarah pointed at the thermostat as I adjusted it to a comfortable heat setting. "How does all the wood fit in that little stove?" she asked, puzzled. When I explained that the furnace burned fuel oil instead of wood, she looked unconvinced. It was a simple but revealing moment. Her home, like most on the reserve, were heated by wood, and the concept of an oil-burning furnace was unfamiliar. Later that week, while waiting at the airstrip for a late-arriving teacher, I watched a modified DC-3 land. Almost immediately, a small tanker truck pulled up alongside it. Peering into the plane's fuselage, I noticed a large, bulging, tarp-like bladder emanating a strong diesel odor. I suddenly understood how the reserve's electricity generator received its fuel supply. The sight of that aircraft, loaded with flammable cargo, landing on a gravel airstrip, quickly erased any lingering childhood dreams of becoming a pilot. Over the next few months, Ruth and Jeanne became close friends, while Eddie introduced me to his circle. One of the most common pastimes was playing cribbage around a wood stove where a kettle of water seemed to boil permanently, ensuring an endless supply of tea. Conversations were different here. Unlike in cities where people often speak just to fill silences, the Ojibwe people spoke with intention. Greetings and goodbyes were minimal. Rarely would a room be filled with overlapping chatter. When someone spoke, everyone listened. Responses were measured, and laughter came easily. Almost everyone smoked. Visiting was more than just socializing. It was a cultural institution. Doors were rarely locked, and knocking was unnecessary. Instead, visitors would simply walk in announcing, "Visiting, visiting." At first it felt intrusive, but I soon understood that this practice was rooted in trust and friendship. Visits often involved tea and conversation. Goodbyes weren't mandatory, and following a guest to the door was considered poor taste, a sign of distrust. The storytelling traditions also fascinated me. Unlike Western narratives, which follow a clear beginning to end structure, Ojibwe storytellers often started in the middle or even at the end, working their way backwards. Some stories had no definite conclusion. Instead, they meandered, filled with memories and meaning. This was especially evident at funerals, where lengthy eulogies unfolded in a non-linear fashion, offering glimpses into a person's life from different angles. For this and many other reasons, life on a reserve was vastly different from anything I had ever known. I learned more than I could ever teach. Though Jeanne and I left Sandy Lake after about 2 years, the experience never left us. Nearly 4 decades later, I still keep in touch with friends from that time. The lessons I learned, the power of silence, the importance of listening, the depth of community bonds have stayed with me ever since.